welcome back again to our ongoing series on the glories of our beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Namo Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pacharane, Nivishesha Shunyavadi, Paschata Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, the other day, after our lecture, which was entitled The Queen of Vrindavan, in which we discussed the prelude up until Srimati Radharani's coronation as Queen of Vrindavan, we didn't discuss the actual coronation itself, at least in detail. So a number of devotees contacted me and they asked if I could describe the actual coronation. So as a service, of course, I agreed. So that's our focus today. Yeah. So here we go. The official coronation of Srimati Radharani as Queen of Vrindavan, it's actually described in several places I found in my research. Most notably in Srila Jiva Goswami's Madhava Mahotsava. He wrote Madhava Mahotsava. But firstly, let's, I think it'd be good to backtrack a little bit. You may remember that when the rumor went around Vrindavan that Radharani had been crowned Queen of Vrindavan by her gopi friends in a playful way in the forest, her chief rival, Chandravali, was very upset. And so Chandravali's best friend, Padma, you can remember, tricked Krishna into apparently saying in public that he felt Chandravali would make a better queen. And with that, the whole of Vrindavan became upset, especially Srimati Radharani. She actually became angry, thinking that Krishna had rejected her. So you could say Krishna was in hot water, to use a modern term, and with no idea how to resolve the issue, he approached Vrindadevi and asked for help. And as I was going through the different scriptures, I found an actual quote, or actually what he actually said to Vrindadevi when he met her. I thought I'd share that with you. He said, Tivram sur esha niyatam sakinayam induhu kim duyate mama tanur amunan yatahatuhu. Oh, Vrindadevi, Krishna said, for so long I referred to Radha's face as the moon. However, now that angry face appears to be like the sun. For if it were the moon, why would it scorch my heart so much? That's Madhava Mahotsava 337. So after saying that, it's described Krishna fell unconscious. And to revive him, Vrindadevi held a garland of Madhavi flowers that was personally made by Sri Radha close to the nose of Krishna. And as soon as the fragrance of that garland entered into Krishna's nose, he woke up. And at that point, he requested Vrindadevi to go see Radha and her friends and explain that he never meant that Chandravali should be Queen of Vrindavan. Krishna said, tell her the opposite is true. I want Sri Radha to be queen. Now hurry. So at that point, Vrindadevi, she went to see Sri Radha and her friends, and she explained what Krishna had said, but they didn't believe Krishna. And what's worse, they sent Vrindadevi back to Krishna with the following message. It's subtle, but it's really nice. The message was as follows. The moon, Chandra, derives its illumination from the sun, Bhanu. Similarly, you may coronate the moon-like Chandravali as the queen of Braj, but she won't be able to illuminate your forest without taking shelter of the sun-like daughter of Bhanu, King Vrishabhanu. That was the message to Krishna. So, as we know, ultimately, the matter was settled when Vrindadevi had Lord Brahma speak as a celestial voice from the sky that Srimati Radharani should be coronated as Queen of Vrindavan. And we remember that Chandravali was devastated, as was Padma. But all the Vraja Vasis, very innocently, they accepted this celestial voice from the sky as something divine. And everybody went about preparing for the ceremony. And that's where the class ended. So, we'll proceed with the coronation. So, from the moment that Radharani heard that celestial decree, I was reading, she accepted it as Krishna's desire. She knew that this pastime of her being crowned Queen of Vrindavan would bring Krishna great pleasure. And pleasing Krishna was her only reason for living. If it pleased Krishna that she walk in procession through Vrindavan, that she be bathed by demigoddesses, that she be dressed as royalty, then she would wholeheartedly and joyfully consent to this decree from heaven. If it pleased Krishna that, she sit on the throne of Vrindavan as a monarch, that she be crowned in his favorite forest, Vrindavan, that she go about and appoint members of a parliament, she would agree to that as well. For her, Krishna is everything. So she agreed to be crowned Queen of Vrindavan for Krishna, really. So it's so sweet. So the next day, in preparation for the actual coronation, there was a traditional Adivasa ceremony. Those of you who live in Mayapur, you're very well familiar with the Adivasa. It's what you do just before the big function starts. So in preparation for the traditional Adivasa ceremony, some of the older ladies of Vrindavan, well, let's say senior ladies like Yashoda, Rohini, and Kirtida Sundari, they began everything by giving their blessings to Sri Radha. And then, as was the custom, some other elderly gopis, they splashed the crowd that was present with butter and yogurt. And I was reading, while others playfully threw fragrant mixtures of turmeric water over everyone present. I just love these details. But here again, the plot thickens, as it often does in Braj Leela. As Padma was still adamant that her best friend, Chandravali, not Radharani, be Queen of Vrindavan. So the next day, after the Adivasa, Padma went to Yavat, where Radharani lives with her husband, Abhimanyu. We've described that Leela before. Abhimanyu is actually the shadow of Krishna, it's described. Anyway, this is where Radharani lives with her husband. And Padma spoke to Radharani's mother-in-law, Jatila. Now, Jatila is rather elderly, a little hard of hearing, kind of grumpy. And she's always on the lookout that Radha and Krishna do not meet. She makes obstacles to the meeting, which makes the meeting more relishable when they do meet. Anyway, Padma said to Jatila, Jatila, didn't you hear the celestial voice say that Krishna, who we know is always fond of flirting with Vrindavan's gopis, will also be present at Srimati Radharani's coronation? You didn't catch that? So hearing this, Jatila became infuriated. And she said, okay then, because of this, I refuse to let Radharani go to this coronation. And then she said, actually, tell all the senior Gopa men to cancel this coronation altogether. Wow. And with that, Jatila locked Sri Radha in her room and placed armed guards at the door. Now news travels fast in Braj. And when people heard, the Vraja Vasis heard that, everyone was very upset. So Purnamasi, Yogamaya, when she heard what had transpired, she came to Yavat, and she spoke in such a way as to quickly allay Jatila's fears. It's okay, Jatila. Don't worry. Krishna's going to be there, but we'll make sure they don't meet. They don't look at each other even. So Jatila agreed. Then Purnamasi dismissed Sri Radha's bodyguards, and she freed Srimati Radharani. So then, soon after, Sri Radha left Yavat to go to the coronation ceremony, accompanied by a large contingent of her ornately dressed girlfriends. It's described that as the Gopi procession moved across the fields of Braja, it was like a multicolored victory banner fluttering in the wind. And Mother Earth, Bhumi, quivered expectantly at the thought of personally bathing Srimati Radharani at the ceremony. And musicians led this procession, followed by women showering flowers and Brahmanis chanting mantras, with some younger gopis trailing behind, carrying many of the ingredients for the sacrifice and for the coronation. And I also read that Srimati Radharani's most intimate friends guarded her so carefully that even demigoddesses in heaven couldn't catch even a glimpse of her. And it's also written that as Sri Radha passed by all the Vraja Vasis' homes on the way to the coronation, they envisioned her as the, quote, sum total of all auspicious things that one could hope to see at the commencement of a journey, at any undertaking, or at a sacrifice. They saw her as the sum total of all auspicious things that one could hope to see at such functions. So when they look closely at her, the Vraja Vasis, it goes into more detail. When the Vraja Vasis saw Sri Radha coming by with this procession, they perceived the ornaments on her ears as flowering creepers in bloom, her braid as the tail of a peacock, her face as a fully opened lotus, her eyes as flitting hummingbirds, and her smile as a pure white swan. And as she left the village area and entered into the forested area where the coronation was actually going to take place, Radha remembered the pastimes that Krishna had enjoyed at different places that they passed by. Here he did this, here he did that, here he did this, here he did that. And it's described that she carried herself in a stately way, befitting a queen. And even her most intimate friends were mesmerized by her association, by her presence. And each of them thought, quote, I must have never properly studied Sri Radha's beauty before today, because she was just so beautiful going on the way to the coronation. The way she carried herself and how she'd been dressed and how everyone was appreciating her. And the gopis were with Radharani like all the time. But something about that day, they thought, each one of them thought, I must have never properly studied Sri Radha's beauty before today. Of course, everything in Vrindavan's increasing. So. And in order to relish the moment on this particular glorious day, at one point, Radharani stopped, and all of her gopi friends crowded around her. And they were very eager to render her some varieties of service at that particular moment. So it's written that on Radha's right, Lalita fanned her, and on her left, Vishaka held a picture of Sri Krishna. In front, Chitra carried sandalwood pulp to refresh Radha's faded tilak. And behind Vishaka, Champakalata carried a jeweled chest meant for Krishna. And behind Champakalata, Tungavidya sang Krishna's glories. And in front and to the right, Indulekha carried Srimati Radharani's tambula. And to Indulekha's left, Rangadevi accompanied herself with a veena as she sang enchanting songs about the divine couple. Kundalata praised Radhika with clever words, and after Kundalata came Sudevi, absorbed in Radha's thoughts, serving Radha's emotions through meditation. Wow. So much in one moment. That's Vrindavan. They all crowded around her in different ways. They rendered their services to her. So it's described that the wives of the demigods were also eager to have Radharani's association. So what did they do? It's amazing. They assumed forms of gopis and joined the procession. Special day. Then in the same way, it's described as a surge of an ocean wave washes driftwood ashore, so a surge of divine love brought Srimati Radharani's colorful procession to rest in the forest at a place called Umrao. Umrao. This is where the coronation was to take place. Now, upon arriving, this contingent of gopis, they all saw a very special grove had been prepared by Vrindadevi for the coronation. Everyone came into this particular grove and they, oh, wow, look. And what Vrindadevi had organized, she'd organized a bathing platform, a coronation throne. She'd organized dignitary seats, observation areas, and all the requisite paraphernalia for the function. Everything was there. So then Vrindadevi took Srimati Radharani. She actually escorted her through each section of this grove, describing the various purposes of these sections in relationship to the ceremony. And after some time, she introduced Sri Radha to this, how would you describe it, a very palatial room that she had built. This big, beautiful room, which was surrounded by 6 smaller rooms, which altogether forms like a square, a large square, which could be accessed from 4 directions through 4 gigantic doors. It's a little detail, but that's how it's described. And the Shastra says that all these rooms were surrounded by distinctive courtyards, floors, arches, trees, gardens, vines, flowers, and canopies, which were all very remarkable, it said. So remarkable that even Lord Brahma was unable to adequately describe them, what Vrindadevi had created. Even Brahma was unable to describe how she'd set up this coronation ceremony. And the Shastra goes on to say that Sri Radha appreciated Vrindadevi's work. But without Krishna, it said, the vast, opulent area had no real attraction for her. Although it was so beautifully designed and set up, and Radharani appreciated. But without Krishna, this beautiful paraphernalia had no attraction for her. So then Sri Radha said to Vrindadevi something very wonderful. She said, "O friend, without Shyam and his artful, loving pastimes, this matrix of groves is like a beautifully decorated body from which the life force has long since passed. I'm not happy here. Wow. O friend, without shame, Krishna, and his artful loving pastimes, this matrix of groves is like a beautifully decorated body from which the life force has long since passed. I'm not happy here. So Vrinda smiled at Radha and she said, be patient, dear. Just as a bejeweled cup signals that nectar will shortly be served, this charming grove signals that a divine pastime is about to unfold. Then the two of them proceeded to a particular part of this beautiful decorated area where they found Purnamasi and some brahmacharis, it's described, lighting a sacrificial fire on an elaborately decorated square platform called the Sarvabhauma Griha. Sarvabhauma Griha. And then as Purnamasi poured oblations into a sacrificial fire on top of that platform and chanted sacred mantras, the wives of Shiva, Surya, Yamaraj, Agni, and other demigods, they appeared on the scene. And in the scriptures described again how this was all going on, but Radharani was kind of lamenting, where's Krishna? It doesn't mean anything unless Krishna's here. It should be the same for us. Life doesn't mean anything unless we're Krishna conscious. So she was thinking like that, and Purnamasi saw this concern on Sri Radha's face, and she read her mind. So Purnamasi turned to her assistant, Vrindadevi, because Vrindadevi assists Purnamasi. And Purnamasi said to Vrinda, she whispered actually, now is the time to bring the blue sapphire of Vrindavan out of hiding. Go quickly. Now is the time to bring the blue sapphire of Vrindavan, Krishna, out of hiding. Go quickly. So Vrinda sped off, and Purnamasi turned her attention back to the proceedings as they're going on. And all of a sudden, an avalanche of flowers fell from the heavens, a signal that the preliminaries in earnest, preparing for the Abhishek bathing ceremony, should begin. So at that very instant, I was reading, sacred waters sprang from the right hands of Mother Ganges, Jamuna, and Saraswati, who are all there in their personified forms. The Ganges was there, the Jamuna was there, Saraswati, and in their personified forms as beautiful ladies. And instantly sacred waters poured from Mother Ganges' hand, from Jamuna's hand, and Saraswati's hand. And that holy water mixed with the perspiration, the divine perspiration of Purnamasi, to form a beautiful lake. And then into the waters of that sacred lake entered the potency of every sacred place in Vrindavan, as well as all the holy tirthas in creation. And at that point, colorful birds began singing from trees that were overhanging the lake's playful waves and blooming lotuses. That's how it's described. And prompted by these very auspicious omens, Srimati Radharani ascended a throne. Now Krishna had been actually watching intently from a secluded grove nearby. And at the sight of Srimati Radharani ascending the throne, it made him start trembling. And he became stunned. And then he collapsed unconscious into Subal's arms. Wow. Krishna was watching Radharani ascend the throne. And he trembled and became stunned. And then he collapsed unconscious into his cowherd friend Subal's arms. So thus when Vrindadevi arrived to bring Krishna into the bathing arena, she first had to assist Subal in reviving him. And when Krishna regained consciousness, what did he do? From his lotus mouth, he just began glorifying Sri Radha as Queen of Vrindavan and as his queen. So meanwhile, the wife of the sun god, her name is Chaya Devi, began offering artik to Radharani with a 5-pronged ghee lamp. Before a large crowd of mesmerized Brajavasis. And while the crowd was absorbed in that meditation of the artik being performed for Sri Radhika, Vrinda brought Krishna into the function. And when they saw Krishna, everyone was very happy. And Vrinda placed Krishna next to Srimati Radharani. And the Shastra says this created a familiar dilemma, which was how in the presence of their elders, Radha and Krishna could restrain themselves from exchanging loving glances. This is called a familiar dilemma. They're together because, there's many functions happening in Vrindavan. They have a structured society. And, very often Radha and Krishna would be at the same function. But the familiar dilemma was how in the presence of their seniors, etc., how would they restrain themselves from looking at each other in a loving way? Sidelong glances. So this was the dilemma. So the Acharya is right. We had to look deep into the scriptures here. The Acharya is right that, quote, the solution lay in the hypnotic effect the divine couple had upon the assembled Brajavasis, an effect that enabled Radha and Krishna to exchange unnoticed but mutually satisfying glances. Everyone was just so absorbed in the hypnotic effect of the divine couple that they didn't notice. Somehow they didn't notice Radha and Krishna. They exchanged their loving glances. Now, even going deeper here, Shastra says, I'm going to quote here, this exchange of glances. In that exchange, Krishna's glance was like a begging bowl extended by the poplar of love. And Radha's glance was like coins of gold bestowed by the monarch of divine emotions and self-satisfied beauty upon Krishna. Hare Krishna. And the Brajavasis were bewildered by the spell of Krishna's transcendental qualities and features. And therefore they didn't notice Radha and Krishna exchanging all these loving glances. Now, when these Brajavasis were like hypnotized by the beauty of the divine couple, some saw Krishna's silken complexion as a cloud mixed with lightning. Others saw the feather in his top knot as a dancing peacock, eager to enjoy the rain of Srimati Radharani's coronation bath. Other Brajavasis saw his shark-shaped earrings as evidence of the charms that melted their hearts. And still others saw his broad chest like they saw the night sky reveling in the 24 and a half moons of Sri Radha's form. Let me repeat that one. Still others saw his broad chest like they saw the night sky reveling in the 24 and a half moons of Sri Radha's form. Now, when I read the 24 and a half moons of Sri Radha's form, that there's some people saw like that, the 24 and a half moons of Sri Radha's form. I wondered, what are the 24 and a half moons of Radha's form? So then I read and I discovered in the Manta Rita Dipika, in that scripture called Manta Rita Dipika, it describes what are the 24 and a half moons of Sri Radha's form. And I'm very happy to share that with you. The 24 and a half moons of Sri Radha's form are as follows. 1, her face is the king of moons. Her left and right cheeks are a moon each. Her forehead is a half moon. The tilak spot of sandalwood on her forehead is another moon. And added to this are the 20 other moons of her fingernails and toenails. Shall we go over that again? Her face is the king of moons. Her left and right cheeks are a moon each. Her forehead is a half moon. The tilak spot of sandalwood on her forehead is another moon. And added to this are the 20 other moons of her fingernails and her toenails. Hare Krishna. So then Krishna broke this trance, how they were perceiving him. They broke that trance. He broke that trance with the sweet music of his flute, which got everyone up singing and dancing. He broke the trance. Everybody started singing and dancing. And with that, all the forest animals came and joined in the kirtan. Everyone was invited. All the animals, they came to the coronation. And cuckoos sang in tune with Krishna's flute. Bees hummed along. And peacocks danced in time with all the Vraja Vasis who were dancing. Can you imagine this scene? The Vraja Vasis are dancing to the sweet sound of Krishna's flute, and peacocks are coming and dancing in time with the dancers. Just envision this. The Vraja Vasis, and then there's peacocks everywhere, and they're also dancing in time. So a few moments later, Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva, she started chanting Vedic mantras as part of the coronation ceremony. And then she offered flowers, dhruva grass, puffed rice, and white mustard seeds to Srimati Radharani. Then she gently sprinkled arghya over Radharani's head. Bear in mind, these, again, are still the preliminary rites to the actual abhishek, the bathing. Radha is going to be bathed 9 times. So then Uma washed Sri Radha's lotus feet with water mixed with rose petals. And with that, Sri Radha folded her hands in respect. And Uma, Uma got a little upset. She whispered to Radha, "Don't offer me respect. Offer me friendship when you play in the Jamuna." Uma's washing Radha's lotus feet with a mixture of rose petals. And with that, Radharani's, she's folding her hands in respect. Thank you, Uma. So Uma whispers, "Please don't offer me respect. Rather, offer me friendship when you play in the Jamuna." Don't bother offering me respect. I want your friendship when you're bathing with your gopi girlfriends in the Jamuna River, because Uma is who she is, but she's hankering for that, the mood of Braj. So then Uma offered ajman, madhuparka, and a second ajman. Those of you who are pujaris, you'll know what I'm speaking about. Different substances, part of the puja. And finally, Uma offered a second artik. And as she offered the second artik to Srimati Radharani, the wife of Lord Shiva, she meditated on her desire to one day become a cowherd girlfriend of Sri Radha in Vrindavan. The meditation went on and on. So at that point, a number of Gandharva girls sang the glories of Radha and Krishna. As Lalita and some of the more prominent cowherd girls sprinkled Sri Radha with 8 auspicious kinds of earth. I thought that was interesting. There's these Gandharva girls singing, the glories of Radha and Krishna. As part of this preliminary up to the bathing ceremony, Lalita and some of the prominent gopis, they sprinkled Radha with 8 auspicious kinds of earth. Now, again, it got my mind going. I was intrigued. What are the 8 auspicious kinds of earth? So I researched, and I found the 8 auspicious kinds of earth. And I was thinking, somehow I'll get these 8 auspicious kinds of earth, and I will utilize them somehow in the service of my deities on my altar. Maybe I'll sprinkle them. So what are these 8 auspicious kinds of earth? These 8 auspicious kinds of earth come from, number 1, a riverbank. Number 2, where a wild boar has dug with his tusk. Number 3, where a bull has dug with his horns. From a doorway, from an anthill, from the ocean, from the property of a temple, and number 8, from the bank of the Ganges. Whew. That is nectar. Now, Shastra states that this earth that was used to be sprinkled on Sri Radha, because it came from Braj, it was made even more auspicious and fragrant by the fact that it had previously come in contact with the feet of the one who wanders throughout Vrindavan, tending cows, searching for young gopis, and playing with his friends. All this earth is auspicious to begin with, according to the previous statement, but it's become even more auspicious because it's Brajrenu. It's the earth of Vrindavan. And the fact that it's so auspicious because previously this earth came into contact with the feet of, actually the description there is there, the one who wanders throughout Vrindavan, tending cows, searching for young gopis, and playing with his friends. Bhagavan Shri Krishna ki, Shri Sham Sundar ki. So next the gopis poured over Sri Radha Panchagavya, 8 more varieties of earth, honey, and finally kusha grass. Now, wait a minute, 8 more varieties of earth? That really got me going, because I was really happy to find those original, because I'm going to get those and sprinkle them on my deities. 8 more varieties. So then I really had to, took me a couple hours, but I found the other 8 varieties. It's like, people go searching for treasures, or they look, gold miners, or, people have those special machines. They're looking for metal on the beaches and different places to find things people have lost. So this is a real way to do it. Search for this nectar. So I found it. The other 8 varieties of earth are earth that comes from the king's door, earth from the juncture of 4 roads, earth where an elephant has dug with his tusks, earth from both sides of a river, earth from a cow pen where the cows are kept, earth that comes from the meeting of 3 pathways, and earth from a town. That's interesting. So they put this over Sri Radha as well. I thought that was really interesting. It was also mentioned, we mentioned there, Panchagavya. Panchagavya is actually a mixture of 5 products received from a cow. Many of us know this because we have our abhisheks, isn't it? In our temples and in our homes. So that's part of a traditional ceremony to bathe the deities in Panchagavya. So Panchagavya means milk, yogurt, ghee, cow dung, and cow urine. All auspicious. Wow. This is an amazing ceremony, isn't it? And this is only part 1 because there's so much, I have to divide it into 2 classes. So after this, some young brahmanis came forward and sprinkled Sri Radha with fragrant water, fragrant with kunkuma. And then, using a pot with 1,000 holes, they bathed her with water blessed by herbs, scents, seeds, flowers, and jewels. A pot with 1,000 holes. And that within that water, it's described that the water was blessed. That's how it's written. It was blessed by herbs, scents, meaning things with a pleasant aroma, seeds, flowers, and jewels. And again, this is all preliminary. This isn't the actual 9 baths. This is all leading up to the main Abhishek. So at this point, it's written that, Radharani is being bathed by these things, or sprinkled, or you could say it's lightly bathed. And at this point, Krishna, he tries to steal a glance at Radharani's figure. But he couldn't look at her figure because his eyes were intercepted by the sweetness of her kunkuma-stained face. That's as far as he got. He wanted to see her transcendental form, but it's described his eyes were intercepted by the sweetness of her kunkuma-stained face. So then Purnamasi, she came forward and she touched Srimati Radharani's head and throat, placed a kusa grass ring on her finger, and soaked her hands in Gurochana. She soaked her hands in Gurochana. Now, what is Gurochana? I use Gurochana often in my deity worship. I put it in the bathing water. Or sometimes I take little parts of Gurochana and when I make the sandalwood paste, the chandan, I put Gurochana. It's quite expensive actually. But Gurochana is just, it's a bright yellow pigment it's described, its luster is more attractive than gold. And it's made in different ways. Nowadays we get that Gurochana from the bile of a cow. In the cow's stomach, the secretion comes. It's a golden secretion. And from the bile of the cow, you can make this, it hardens into little pieces when you obtain it from the cow dung. Then it crystallizes, and then they sell it in the market, and you mix it like that. It makes a beautiful golden color in the chandan. But sometimes you can get it from rainwater flowing from the hoof of a cow during the Swati Nakshatra constellation. Haven't got that type of Gurochana yet. Rainwater flowing from the hoof of a cow during the Swati Nakshatra constellation. Swati Nakshatra constellation. Whenever that happens in the stars, then the rain, if it rains and it flows over the hoof of a cow, boom, you've got your Gurochana. So this was also used in the ceremony for Sri Radha. So after all these auspicious rituals, Srimati Radharani and everyone was ready for the main part of the coronation ceremony. 9 auspicious baths. And there's a great detail about each bath. But just to begin with, each bath was poured from a pot made entirely of different jewels. Each pot was carved from a jewel, a particular jewel. 9 different pots. There was a coral pot made only of coral. There was a ruby pot. Must have been a big ruby. One pot made only out of rubies. A pearl pot, a diamond pot, a cat's eye pot, an emerald pot, a yellow sapphire pot, a blue sapphire pot, and a pot made from gomeda. Gomeda. So, what is gomeda? I looked up gomeda. Gomeda is known as hessonite in modern times. It's a pure, yellowish, transparent gem that I was reading in astrology. It counteracts the evil effects of the Rahu planet. So 9 pots: coral, ruby, pearl, diamond, cat's eye, emerald, yellow sapphire, blue sapphire, and gomeda, these pots. So at this point, the pots were ready, and the auspicious sacred waters from the lake that we described earlier, that came from the hands of those Ganga, Jamuna, and so forth, perspiration of Purnamasi, that lake, the pots were filled. So at this point, it's really building up when you read it. It's like, whoa. At this point, the principal gopis step forward, each of them eager to serve their beloved queen by bathing her with water from these auspicious pots. At the same time, this crowd, everyone moves forward to observe this. It's just like a wave. The whole crowd comes around Srimati Radharani for this auspicious ceremony. And I was reading, the demigods and their wives jostled above in the sky in their flower airplanes for better vantage points to observe the ceremony. It's like, and even the forest animals, the birds and bees maneuvered themselves closer. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the most beautiful form of Sri Radha, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani, who was dressed in very beautiful bathing attire, some special attire that her girlfriends had dressed her in. And soon they had dressed her in this attire and were very anxious, looking forward to her soon becoming officially their queen. So then Mother Purnamasi, she steps forward and she announces, "Let the 9 baths begin." And with that, we'll finish today. Prabhus. I know you're probably sitting on the edge of your seats, but we have to finish. Can't go on too long. Well, we could go on forever, but let's take it in different parts. So we'll relish more in a couple days. We'll finish here, leaving you hankering for more nectar about our beloved Srimati Radharani's auspicious coronation ceremony. We're back in a couple of days. And if you're fortunate to have Radha and Krishna on your altar in your homes or in your temples, now when you see her next time, you'll appreciate her even more. And that's our process. Shravanam Kirtanam brings Krishna Smaranam, Radha Krishna Smaranam, which is the goal. Thank you so much for, again, giving me this opportunity. I just really relished researching this particular part of Braj Leela, the coronation of Srimati Radharani, and I have a whole other lecture. We're going to go through each bath, how it was performed, what it meant, what were all the emotions, Radha, Krishna, the gopis, the animals, everyone's there, focused. So we're back in a couple of days. Let's just finish, as we usually do, with a few appropriate verses to kind of wind up the pastime and experience a little bit of the emotion of the Leela. This is from Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati's Vrindavan Mahimamrita. Quote, when will my heart become immersed with the great joy in the ocean of sweetness, pastimes, and beauty of Sri Radha's lotus feet? When will I live in Vrindavan, rejecting the most esteemed wealth of impersonal liberation as if it was just a blade of grass? My heart has been stolen by Sri Radha, who walks through her forests, shining with beauty in her lotus feet, sweet with the sound of her ankle bells, making the surface of the ground pleasantly gold and red, with attractive rings on her toes and quivering anklets gleaming with gems. Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki. Hare Krishna. All glories to Prabhupada. He's the revealer of the Dham. It's all only by his mercy. Be back in a couple of days. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Goloka Vrindavan Dham ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe Shyam. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.